Welcome to today's explainer. You know, right at this very moment, you're doing something that feels completely effortless, right? You're just sitting there, taking a breath. But underneath that simple action is an absolutely incredible biological machine at work. Today, we're going to be exploring the mechanisms of biological breathing and respiration. And yeah, we definitely use those two words interchangeably all the time in everyday conversation. But once we really look closely at our lungs and our cells, we're going to see that it's actually a completely different story.
So, let's ask the big question right out of the gate. Are breathing and respiration the exact same thing? Honestly, if you ask almost anyone on the street, they'd probably say, yeah, of course. But our main objective today is to challenge that misconception and separate these two completely different worlds. One is all about the physical lungs doing the heavy lifting, and the other is about microscopic cells generating energy, something called ATP.
Okay, let's dive into this with Section 1, Organisms and Life Processes. We're going to start by looking at the really broad framework of how living biological entities actually operate.
Our source material explicitly frames this as a foundational Year 8 curriculum focus. Now, why start there? Well, it's because you really can't grasp complex biology without mastering this exact bedrock concept first. Just like a building needs a strong, deep foundation before you put up the walls, we need a really solid starting point to build our understanding of life.
When you break it down, every living thing basically relies on a trinity of rules. First, you have the structure of living organisms. Think of that like the physical architecture, like the intricate veins in a leaf. Then you have the function of living organisms, which is what those structures actually do, the turning gears, so to speak. And finally, you have the broader life processes, like a cell actively sustaining life. Pretty much every mechanism we're going to discuss today falls right into one of these three overarching buckets.
Moving right along to Section 2, Mechanisms in Biology. Now we're going to zoom in from those broad life processes to focus on some very specific actions.
Our text highlights a very specific word here, mechanisms, and we're defining mechanisms as the specific biological processes under examination, namely breathing and respiration. It's so important to remember that these aren't just passive things that magically happen to us. They are active, functional processes constantly working within the machinery of the organism.
All right, Section 3, Breathing versus Respiration. This is it. It is time to tackle the absolute crucial difference between the two.
The syllabus marks this specifically as Objective 1.3. That makes it a major milestone that you just have to master. We are literally transitioning from the macro level, like the big organs of the body, all the way down to the micro level of cellular chemistry. You've got to conquer this specific transition if you want to truly understand biology.
So let's define our first term. Breathing is a specific biological mechanism and function. It is heavily structural. Think of it as entirely mechanical. We're talking about the physical act of ventilation here. Your diaphragm contracting, your chest cavity expanding. It's simply the physical movement bringing oxygen into the body and pushing carbon dioxide right back out.
Now, what about respiration? Well, respiration is a distinct biological mechanism and life process. So while breathing is that physical mechanical action we just talked about, respiration is actually a cellular process. It's the invisible chemical reaction happening deep inside your cells, unlocking energy from glucose and oxygen to literally power your entire body. And this brilliantly illustrates our key takeaway. We have breathing over on one side and respiration on the other. You've got the mechanical bellows of breathing contrasted with the chemical energy factories of respiration. Now, they do sit side by side under the broad umbrella of living organisms, and of course, respiration absolutely relies on the oxygen that breathing provides, but blurring the lines between the physical mechanism and the chemical process is exactly what we have to avoid.
In fact, our source leaves us with a very clear, strict mandate. It literally says, know the difference between breathing and respiration. Because think about it, if you conflate a physical lung expanding with a microscopic cell generating ATP, you're missing out on understanding the incredible dual-layer machinery that keeps you alive every single second of the day.
So just to summarize the journey we just took. Step 1, we examined the overarching structure of living organisms. Step 2, we dug into understanding their function. And finally, Step 3, we differentiated the specific mechanisms, pulling apart the physical act of breathing from the microscopic life process of respiration.
To wrap things up, I really want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. If breathing and respiration are definitively different mechanisms, one physical, one chemical, how exactly does the structure of a living organism support both of these life processes?
Basically, how does the single, unified architecture of our bodies seamlessly connect the macro to the micro? It's a huge puzzle and definitely something to chew on. Thank you so much for joining me for today's explainer. Keep asking great questions, and I will catch you in the next one.